Alright, so chapter 9.3 is a one-day lesson. There is no A, B, or C because it is a very direct lesson, and the homework is going to be set up to where, again, if you do your job, you can get something out of it. We've learned how to use the quadratic equation. The number one point to know is that the quadratic equation, what we just learned, can solve any equation that contains an x squared as long as it's set equal to 0. Remember I told you about the elephant on the boat. In this problem here, I googled how to show my mouse on Keynote, by the way. But in this problem here, once it's set equal to 0, you can do, and you know that this is your A, this is your B, that's your C. And so once you plug that into your formula, you get your answer. On this one here, again, the difference is there's only two things, but that's x squared, so that's A. That's x, so that's B. And since there's no number, that means that C is just 0. And so you would use your quadratic formula, just plug in C equals 0, and again, same thing would work with this question. 9x squared plus 8 equals 0. Again, there's two terms, but still, since that's an x squared, that means that A would be 9. Since there's no x, that means that B would be 0 and C would be 8. You would plug those numbers into your quadratic formula and get the answer. So what you just learned over the last few days will solve anything that has an x squared in it, as long as you move everything over to one side and set it equal to 0. Again, that is the necessity for two of the three strategies we're going to use to solve quadratic equations. The third one is different, and this one here actually can be dealt with easier. And what we're going to learn, and what you're going to see, is that whenever there's an x squared but no x to confuse that the squared version of it, then we can just use algebra. In other words, we're going to move the 8, we're going to move the 9, and we're going to move the 2 by using algebra to do it. The first and only thing you need to know is how to remove the squared portion of the x. We know how to move the 5. We know that when it's x plus 5 equals 7, we know this is a positive 5, which means 5 is being added, so we subtract 5. We know that whenever it's x minus 3, if you want to move this negative 3, you add 3 to both sides. We know that if we want to move the 6, these are being multiplied, so we divide. We know that if we want to move the 9, this is being divided, so we multiply, or at least you should know that. And if you do know that, then you're going to be just fine today, because again, there's really nothing tough about doing the algebra part. That's why I'm wrapping up your week with some easy things. So how do you get rid of the squared? Well, first off, let's use our common sense. And remember that x squared means a number times itself. And so this statement says a number times itself equals 25. And the number that I know that multiplies by itself to equal 25 is 5. The issue you're going to have on your homework is that this is only partially correct, because yes, I agree that 5 times 5 is 25, but I also know that if you take negative 5 times itself, you get 25. So the actual correct answer is 5 and negative 5. And you'll simply put 5 comma negative 5 in your Math Excel when you do that. No space, just 5 comma negative 5. Or you could even put negative 5 comma 5. But both of those answers actually work. Another hint for you is to notice that this 2, or to think about it as this 2 is telling you that you should have two answers. The only way you don't have two answers is if it's 0, because positive 0 and negative 0 is the same exact thing. So what did we do to eliminate the 2? Let's just look at our calculator design real quick before we answer that question. When you look at your calculator, you recognize that plus and minus are stacked. There's remember, to get rid of a plus 5, you subtract. To get rid of a minus 3, we add. Notice that multiplication and division are also stacked. Notice that, remember that to get rid of something that's multiplied, you divide. To get rid of something that's divided, you multiply. That's not an accident. The people who design the calculator know that these are opposites, and so therefore they are stacked. But x squared, which is over here, is stacked with, and here's the thing. The reason these are stacked as actual buttons is because plus, minus, times, divided by are actually actual functions that are pretty popular. X squared stack is not the button above it. It is the green portion above it. It is stacked with square root. So the reason these two are stacked up the way they are is because they're opposites. For example, the opposite of sine, which is what you call this, not sin, but sine, is sine negative 1. The opposite of cosine is cosine negative 1. The opposite of ln, which is what that says, is e to the power of x. The opposite of a log is 10 to the power of x. There's a whole lot of opposites set up on this part already for you to know. But again, the opposite of x squared is square root. So to eliminate a power of 2, square root both sides. So revisiting that problem, if you have x squared equals 25 on paper, you would on paper take the x squared equals 25 and square root both sides. What happens is the 2 and the squared are opposites, so just like the plus and minus, they cancel out, bringing down just x. And then the square root of 25 is 5 in your calculator, but you will have to remember that negative 5 also works whenever you plug it in there. Alright? So, what we're here for is to actually make sure that you can do your homework. There's me Googling the how to do the keynote thing. Told you all have all the information you need on the internet. And you still don't know everything you're supposed to know. It's a shame. I'm just being facetious though. Okay, on this assignment, you're going to show the main steps of work when necessary. X squared equals 4. I don't think you need a calculator for this. You're looking for a number. If you were to square root both sides, the square root of 4 is 2, comma, negative 2. And then again, you can just hit enter for that to work. We should know f squared equals 81. Let me zoom this in so you can see a little bit better. There you go. Actually, one more. So if f squared equals 81, again, you would square root both sides on your paper or whatever it might be, getting 9, and you can even put negative 9, comma 9 if I programmed it right. There we go. So again, that's just easy enough to do, but if I get a number I don't know, just get your calculator and do square root of 225, which is 15. So we know that our answers are 15 and negative 15. In this problem, you can show the work on paper, but really what I need is the main steps. And what I mean by the main steps is you've got two numbers to move, a 2 and a 12. And in real algebra, you don't need to really write the minuses and the divides by and all that stuff to move it. You just recognize that we are going to move the 12 first. Why? Because remember, we moved the weakest attachment. This 2 is the strongest attachment to C, because if you remember PEMDAS, P-E-M-D-A-S, this is an exponent, which means the only thing that's stronger than this is a parentheses. So therefore, we are looking at this number moving. The way you move that 12 is by subtracting 12. So I am going to see what 208 minus 12 is. It is 196. So that means that we will end up with C squared. You can use the caret, by the way, the little arrow above the 6 to do that, equals 196. And then you will do square root of 196 to get, as it says over here, 14. So 14 and negative 14. Not a hard section. Again, as long as you practice like you're supposed to, I think you'll be fine. You'll realize that this isn't so bad. Again, another one of these, a squared minus 3 equals 1. So what we want to do, and I don't need the calculator on this, but to move this negative 3, we will add it. That means that a squared, again, use the shift 6 for the power. So a squared equals 4. And tab again to move to the next box. Square rooting both sides to get rid of the square would be square root of 4 as 2 and negative 2. Here again, u squared plus 7 equals 736. First off, u squared equals, because I know that 7 is going to go away. When I subtract 7, I can ignore the 7. 36 minus 7 is, I believe, 29. No, I don't know. I really don't know. 7 plus what is 16? Hey. Oh yeah, it is. It is. It's 29. I was thinking 29 because I ignored the 7. It's 729. Whew. I was ignoring the 7, doing 36 minus 7, which I knew was 29, but then I was thinking there is nothing that goes into 29 when you square it, but I forgot that the 7 I had covered up was there. But u squared equals 729 because I subtracted that. Then, of course, you square root both sides. 729, I don't know what that is. I should know what that is. I know it ends in a 3 probably, or 7. I don't know. 27. So 27 comma negative 27. And again, I'm just working these out to show you that, this is within your range. Here, now I know I've taught you before to switch first, but you're just going to go ahead and divide by the negative. Again, the thing you have to keep in mind is you have multiplication here, and you have an exponent here. And again, in terms of PEMDAS, P-E-M, E is above M, which means that the 2 is stronger than the 7, which means the first number you're going to get rid of is the 7. So we're going to bring down h squared equals, and then we're going to do negative 112 divided by negative 7. Actually, I don't need to. I'm just going to do 112 divided by 7. Actually, I hit the slash. That's pretty interesting. And I get 16. Now, why didn't I do negative 112 divided by negative 7? Because I'm using my common sense to know that a negative divided by a negative is positive. And so I just use the answer that I get with whatever I know the sign is going to be, which is 16. Tab to move to the next box. Again, square rooting both sides. Square root of 16 is 4. And don't forget that you also have a negative 4 in that answer. Again, notice I'm not hitting space anywhere. I'm not adding spaces anywhere. I'm just moving through this. Again, 9y squared equals 7569. Again, that's more powerful than the 9, so we must move the 9. Feel free to use the calculator if you want. I like to do these things in my head. I know 9 goes into 75 8 times. That makes 72. Then, if 72 is my number, there's 3 left over, which I imagine here. 3 over 6 makes 36. 9 goes into 6 4 times. I'm sorry, 36 4 times, with nothing left over, which means that 9 goes into 9 once. From there, the square root of 841 is in 1. 27 was something else. Should be like 20. I don't know. I should know these things. Square root of 841. I just haven't used it in a while. You don't use it, you lose it. 29. I did say 29, didn't I? Instincts. That's why you gotta learn to trust your instincts. Same thing here. Negative 2t squared equals negative 8. First thing you gotta recognize is this goes last because that's the most powerful part. Negative 2, I'm going to divide by negative 2 again. 8 divided by 2 is 4. I know it'll be positive because both of these things are negative, so t squared equals 4. And then when I square root both sides, I get 2 and negative 2. Please make sure to contact me if you're having any issues, because again, this isn't really tough. You just got to make sure you're ready, especially for these last 4 that we'll do, 10, 11, 12, and 13, because these are realistic ones you're going to see. The first thing you're going to do is add 9. So bring down everything else, so negative 4r squared equals, because again, this is the weakest, that's addition and subtraction, that's multiplication, division, so the 9 goes first by adding it. Adding 9 means you're going to subtract, which means I think you get negative 1156. I think. I'm going to trust myself this time, because 6 plus 9 is 15. Yep. And then I'm going to, now that I have this step here, divide by negative 4, so r squared equals, let's see if we can do that trick again. 4 goes into 11 2 times. That would be at 8. That leaves me 3, so 3 into 35 would be, 4 goes into 35 8 times, with 3 left over, and 4 goes into, because 3 is left over, put it over the 6, 4 goes into 36 9 times, and I do know that this is 17, because my teacher made me actually memorize this. Odd enough, and you might say, well, your teacher made you memorize it, why didn't you make us memorize it? Well, I can't even make you guys do your homework, and so I learned to stop forcing you to do stuff that causes you to fail, because when you didn't memorize it, and she put it on a test, you failed your test. So I would make you memorize it, but the majority of your generation does not like to do their job, and so I had to kind of take certain wars out of my classroom, because I wanted my students to know all that stuff. But again, the stubborn students are outweighing the not stubborn students, and getting a lot of F's, and then their parents complain because they think that it's the teacher's fault. But I'm not going to complain on this video. Now you have evidence. 7c squared minus 13 equals 2010. Again, multiplication, exponent, addition, subtraction, that's the weakest. That goes first, so we're going to add 13 to both sides. That should be easy. 23. Tab again to move to the next box. 7c squared, so c squared goes last, 7, so I'm going to do that trick again here. C squared equals 7 goes into 20 2 times. That puts me at 14, with 6 left over. Put the 6 over the 2. 7 goes into 62 8 times without passing it up, because 63 would be 9 times. So 62 8 times, which puts me at 56 with 6 left over. 6 goes over to 3, making 9. And as we just saw last time, 289 square rooted is 17. Now these last two are different, and don't get caught up on them, because again, you're going weakest to strongest. This is the closest thing to the variable, but this is the next closest thing, because remember, parentheses outweigh everything. So parentheses makes this 9 powerful. So the first thing you'd actually do here is eliminate the 8. So you will bring down d squared minus 9, and you'll divide both sides by 8. Let's try it again. Let's see if we can get better at it. 8 goes into 17 twice with 1 left over. 8 goes into 12, because remember, that's where the 1 goes. 8 goes into 12 once with 4 left over. 8 goes into 48 16 times. I'm sorry, 6 times. Yeah. Anyway, now you add 9, you get d squared equals 225, and then the number that makes that is 15 and negative 15. Again, feel free to use your calculator, but as you can see, most of these numbers are within your range, especially if you're trying to work on your number sense. Again, in this situation, because the 4 is in parentheses, we have to move the 2 first. Cutting this in half still works. W squared, and I'm showing you this to make sure you understand you have to type all this stuff in. So when you mess up on your work, make sure to take a picture of this with your work all the way down to here. Don't just show me something and say, how do I do this? Show me all this, because you are seeing how to do it right now on this video. W squared plus 4, cutting that in half would be 5 and 3. Now we subtract 4 from both sides, so W squared equals 49, and then that would be 7 and negative 7. So with that said, that is all you really need to know how to do. Just again, make sure that if you have any issues, you do the work. Make sure you've watched the whole video, because another thing I'm going to do before I answer your question when you send it is I'm going to look to see if you actually finished the video, because if you didn't finish the video, again, you're just making me teach you, which is what I'm doing right now at 6:36 in the morning. So please don't ask me to help you if you did not do your part, but again, feel free to ask anything you need whenever anything else is going on. Other than that, have a good day and enjoy your Thursday. We got one more this week, and then you get a week off.